Hey, it's the final exam review for beginning algebra. And you have one last test to take sometime this week. And it's only 21 questions. And this review worksheet was specifically designed for a bigger test, like a 33 question test. But since I cut some of the stuff out because it's online, you didn't sign up for that, but there's still some questions I have to ask. And so we won't go over this whole thing. We will go over the ones that matter, if that makes sense. So 1, 2, 3, 4 are all dealing with the rules of negatives. And so you might want to write something over here like rules for negatives. Just having this handy probably would help you. And then I would say for adding, subtracting, we have a rule which says same signs add, and then different signs subtract, right? But no matter what, you always keep the bigger number's sign. Sorry, I'm writing kind of small, but I'm just trying to make a little box over here for that. And then also minus minus means plus, or plus plus if you want to do it that way. So there's for adding and subtracting. And then for multiplying and dividing, there's different rules, which says 2 negatives mean a positive. And that's basically the rule you have to remember for multiplying and dividing. If there are 2 negatives being multiplied or divided, you make it positive. If there are more than 2, then break it down into 2, 2, and 2, and however many there are. So if there were 6, you'd be 2, 2, and 2, and they would all become positive. But if there were 7, you'd have 2, 2, 2, and 1, and there would still be one left, one negative left. Anyway, that's just for rules for negatives. And so as we go into number 1, we see that this is numbers in parentheses side by side, and that means times. So this follows this rule: 2 negatives make a positive. Oh look, 2 negatives. So the answer is going to be positive, and you're still going to say 1 times 7 times 3, which is 21. Right? Number 2 is 5 minus negative 7 plus negative 13. You can put a little star next to that one. And in fact, you can put a little star next to that one. I feel like the quiz questions follow these two pretty closely. And what you need to do is you need to go with these rules, not these. So this is multiply, divide, not what we're doing. Here we go, same signs add, different signs subtract. Minus minus means plus. So here we have minus minus, that's going to mean plus. So I'm going to circle it and make it look like that. And then I'm going to say, what's 5 plus 7? That's 12. And then bring down the third number. And then I look at those two signs and I go, oh, they're different signs. And different signs mean subtract. So 13 minus 12 is 1. And I keep the bigger number's sign, negative 1. There you go. Yeah, so definitely take a look at those two when you get a chance, because those are very similar to the quiz. Now, number 3 and number 4 is just a little bit more the same, a little bit more practice. So here we have 10 times negative 3 times negative 9 times negative 1. So again, this is all times. And 2 negatives make a positive, so these two are going to make positive 27. We still have a negative 1, we still have a 10. And then these two will make 270. But then it's multiplied by negative 1, so the answer is finally negative 270. Okay? So yeah, just do 2 at a time. And I did it from these two, but you could have started with these two. 10 times negative 3 is negative 30, and then negative 30 times negative 9 is positive 270, and it would have been the same answer. With number 4, we have negative 1 minus negative 15 minus 17 plus 13. So again, this goes for the add subtract rules, and so minus minus becomes plus, and there's no other minus minuses. I always do that first, by the way. This thing, do first. Okay? So we have 1 and plus negative 1 plus 15. They're different signs because this is positive now and this is negative. So subtract Larger number is positive. You don't have to write the plus in front of it. But then you bring down the other two, and then you do it again. These two are different signs, positive, negative. So we subtract, and we keep the larger number's sign. And then you bring down that last one, and then you do it one last time. Different sign, subtract. 13 minus 3 is 10, and then the larger number is positive, so final answer, positive 10. Okay? So that's dealing with negatives. Shoop. And that's a couple of the questions on the final exam. And then we have the next section, which actually writes out the rules for you. So we have add or subtract means get a common denominator. Multiply means cancel first and then multiply across. Now, just remember multiply across, you know, and then you can simplify after that. And then divide means hold, change, flip, or you can remember KFC, keep, change, flip, keep, flip, change, however you want to do. So let's look at number 5. We have, oh, these are definitely on there, by the way. And I'm sorry, but that's just the nature of this class. We want you to understand fractions. So, yeah, we're testing you on it. So this one you definitely want to look at. All right, I remember that one. Something similar to that on the quiz. And that is you want to find a common denominator because this is a minus sign. That's add or subtract, and that follows the rule, get a common denominator. So what I would do is I would look at the two denominators, and I would say, start with the biggest one and go, does 5 go into him? No. And then I start to think about multiples of him that 5 does go into. So I go 6, 12, no. 18, no. 24, no. 30, yes, that's the one. So this one, we're going to change. I'm going to go below like this. Both of them to 30. Now, if you multiply the two together to get 30, then you can cross multiply to get your new numerator. So 6 times 4, make sure you go up, by the way. That'll tell you where to put your answer. So 6 times 4, 24, goes in that first one. 5 times 5 is 25, that goes in that one. Okay? So now that they have a common denominator, you can say 24 minus 25. That goes back to this rule of different signs, subtract. And you keep the larger number sign. So 25 minus 24 is 1. The larger number is negative. And then you keep the denominator the same when you actually add or subtract. And there you go. So yeah, so definitely look at 5. Number 6, negative 4/5 divided by 5/6. And let me see if I remember this. This was on there. Looking back. Yeah, something like this is on there. Absolutely. So let's put a star next to him too. Okay. So we need to do the divide rule, which is hold, change, flip according to that sheet. Where you can remember KFC. And then you can go keep this first one the same. Flip this guy to make 6/5, and then change it to multiply. That's KFC. And then, because it's multiply, we can go straight across. That's the rule for multiplying. Multiply straight across, so we get negative 24 up top, and then 5 times 5 is 25 in the bottom. That doesn't simplify, so we're all done with that guy. Okay? Number 7 is more practice with multiplying fractions and your negative rules, because remember when we multiply, 2 negatives make a positive. Well, look at here. This is multiplying, and there's 2 negatives. And the rule for fractions is straight across. So there's a couple of rules that we have to remember here, is that 2 negatives make a positive. You don't have to write this. I'm just doing that. And then 5 times 2 is 10, going straight across, and then 8 times 6 is 48. And of course, you know, if you have a calculator, you could use it. I don't care. So 10 over 48 reduces. They both have a 2 in common. So if I divide a 2 at both the top and bottom, I'm going to get a 5 and on the top, and I'm going to get a 24 on the bottom, and that is reduced. Okay. All right, that's multiplying. And then we got number 8, which is also very similar to number 5. We're looking for a common denominator because it's subtracting. That's the rule, find a common denominator. But in this one, instead of multiplying them together to get, 162? I don't want to do that. Instead, I'm going to look at both of these. I'm going to start with a bigger number, and I'm going to go, does 9 go into 18? Sure does. Well, then that's your guy. right? So it didn't work here because when I said was 5 going to 6, the answer was no, and then I had to think about multiples. Here, when it does work, that's your answer. That's your least common denominator. If it didn't work, you would go, what's 18 times 2? 36. Does 9 go into 36? And so on and so on. But in this case, 18 works just fine. So because this guy didn't change, neither does his numerator, right? But this guy did change. And I have to say, how many times did I multiply 9 by... What did I multiply 9 by to get to 18? And that's 2, right? That gives me 18. And so that means I'm going to have to multiply the top 4 times 2 and get 8. Okay. Now I can subtract across. 17 minus 8 is 9. Is that right? Yeah. And then, ooh, look, that 9 goes into 18, right? So I can divide a 9 out of both the top and bottom and get 1/2. Yeah, so 5 and 8 are very similar in how you approach it, only finding the common denominator is a little different. 6 and 7 are very similar, except, you know, this one's KFC and this one's straight across. Oh, we got 2 more, sorry. I thought that was it. Silly me. 9. -2/9, and then we get minus -4/15. And we're asking you to remember that minus minus means plus, right? And so this is an adding or subtracting problem. We're going to find a common denominator. So we say, okay, let's start with 15. Does 9 go into 15? Nope. And then we go, what about multiples of 15? 30? No. 45? Yes. Right? 15 times 3 is 45. So that's your guy. Now, if you wanted to, you could multiply 9 times 15 to get 135 and use that as your denominator and then cross multiply. But if I'm going to use 45, which is the least common denominator, I just need to start with 9 and go, what did I multiply him by? 5. So I'm going to multiply that guy, -10. Use a plus now. Those minuses are gone. Then what did I multiply 15 by to get that? It's 3. So I'm going to say 4 times 3. Get 12. Okay? So this is a process where you find the least common denominator and then deal with each denominator individually as far as what you multiply top and bottom by. This is very different. You could also, just as a side thing, just me restarting the problem. So again, plus. But now if I multiply these two guys together, kind of looks like a weird smiley face. I get, what is it, 135? 135? I think. 15s, 45, 40, yeah. Okay, go. And then I cross multiply, and so I get 15 times -2 is -30. And then 9 times 4 is 36. And then that answer ends up giving me 6 over 135. And that can be reduced by dividing by, 3. That'll give me 2 over 45, right? So here, that's what I get now, is I had 45, and I say -10 plus 2. I subtract, keep the larger number sign. Yeah, so you get to the same answer, just 2 different ways. So this way looks for the least common denominator, and this way you just multiply them together and cross multiply. And maybe you like this way better for all your fraction problems when it's adding and subtracting, and if you do, do it. It's good. If you want to do it this way, do it. Just you have to choose. All right. -2/9 divided by 4 over 15. Okay, here we're going to keep flip change. So -2 over 9 stays the same. We're going to change this to 15 over 4, and then we're going to change that to times. Sorry, keep flip change. Now we go straight across. -2 times 5 is -30. 9 times 4 is 36. And then, ooh, they both have a 6 in common. So I'm going to divide by 6. I'm going to get -5 over 6. Now there's another way to do this too, but I don't want to confuse you too much. So let's just go straight across and you'll be fine. All right, number 11. We come to the order of operations problems. And please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, you can just write that off to the side, PEMDAS. If you remember it as PEMDAS, it's some weird word from a foreign language, go for it. But PEMDAS, you might want to write what they stand for. Parentheses, exponent, multiply, divide, add, and subtract. You know what? Multiply. There we go. So that's a little thing. And things you need to remember is that multiply and divide happen at the same time, and then add and subtract happen at the same time. So both of those, you will go left to right. Left to right. So if divide comes before multiply, left to right, then you do it first. If subtract comes before add, left to right, you do it first. But all multiply and divides happen before all add subtracts, if that makes sense. Let's look at examples, maybe. You're probably like, what? But the thing is, we did this so long ago that maybe you've forgotten, which is why we're going over this again. So I have a plus and a times and a subtract. And multiply comes before add or subtract. So this is your guy. Now, underline the thing you're working on. That helps. If you underline it and then you write below what you did, 4 times 3 is 12, then just bring down everything else exactly the way it is, then you'll screw up way less. So now I have plus and minus, and they happen at the same time, so I'm going to go left to right. It just so happens that add is first. And bring down minus 17, and then 32 minus 17 is, I think, 15. Okay? Let's see. I'm trying to remember if that one, there was one like that on there. I don't think one like that specifically is on there. Sorry. Let me get to it. There are 2 simplify problems, like with order of operations. And this one's like a softball, I guess, so it's not on there. I'll point out the ones that will be on there. This one also is a softball. It's just trying to get you to understand that exponent happens first and then multiply, right? 13 is not a softball. It's actually a very difficult problem. And so I didn't put it on the final exam. But, you know, it's good to practice. So this is what it starts off with. 10 minus 2, bracket, 5 minus 3, parentheses, 7 minus 4, close, close, right? And the thing you want to make sure you do not subtract first. Do not do it. Don't do it. With this problem, it's real easy to do because I'm sorry. I shouldn't say do not subtract 10 minus 2 or 5 minus 3. That's bad. But this one, that's the one you want to do. So put a little X underneath those 2, and then put the underline underneath 7 minus 4. Because when we work parentheses, we go from the inside out. So 7 minus 4 is first. And then everything else exactly the way it is. And it's a little tedious, I know, but you got to do it. All right, so now you're done with that parentheses. You look outside of it, and you got a times and a minus. The times happens first. Again, do not subtract 10 minus 2 or 5 minus 3 first. Get rid of that. That's confusing. Sorry about that. I was trying to keep you from doing that, and I screwed up. Okay, 3 times 3 is 9. All right, everything else exactly the same. 5 minus is down there, the brackets are down there, the 10 minus 2 is down there. And by the way, look at this. Once you multiply by an outside number, the parentheses disappears. Same thing will go for the bracket when we get to it. But for now, we got to do 5 minus 9, and that is negative 4 because we keep the larger number sign. But that bracket's still there because I didn't multiply by an outside number yet. Now I will. So that multiply happens before that subtract, and it's a negative 2 times negative 4 is a positive 8. And now the brackets are gone because I multiplied by an outside number. And then 10 plus 8 is just 18. Like I said, this is a very difficult problem because you have to understand that we go from the inside out when we work parentheses. And we have to remember that multiply always happens before subtraction. Subtraction inside the parentheses, and then multiply happens before subtraction. And 2 negatives make a positive. There's a lot of rules with this problem, you know? All right, 14. This one, put a star next to that guy. 5 parentheses, 4 minus 6, close parentheses, plus 2. And then 10 minus 2 times 17. So I know there's one on the final exam very similar to this one, so that's why I would definitely want to check it out. So inside the parentheses first. Now here's the thing. There's an invisible parentheses for all the stuff in the top and for all the stuff in the bottom. So really this is working from the inside out, but just think of it as do all the top stuff first, do all the bottom stuff, and then do the divide thing that's in between them. So think of this as like a partition, and it's really just two different problems. So let's go to the right like this. And the first thing I would do before minus 6, everything else stays the same. -2, I believe. Yeah. Subtract, keep the larger number sign. +2 still there. Here, this nothing to do inside, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply these two. 10 is still there, and then 2 times 17 is 34. Okay. And then up top, I'm going to do this multiply before I add. So 5 times -2 is -10. Bring over the +2, sorry. And then I get to subtract these two. Larger number keeps the sign. 34 minus 10 is 24, and then I'm going to make it negative. And then the last thing to do is this up top. I get same thing, different sign, subtract, keep the larger number sign. All right. So that's me working the top separately from the bottom until I get to a single number. Now, two negatives make a positive when you divide, so that becomes positive. And you get to divide by 8. You get to simplify this fraction by dividing by 8. And you'll be left with 1 and over 3. It's positive, so 1/3. Okay? That one's a goodie. Also put a star next to 15. Because I remember one on the final exam like this. S cubed plus 4, okay? So order of operations still, we're going to work with it parentheses first, so that stuff. Everything else is going to stay the same. The parentheses is still there because we didn't ever multiply by an outside number yet. Okay? And then exponents next. So I'm going to deal with that next. So the -3 is still there. This is still parentheses, -2 raised to the third power is -2 times -2 is +4 times -2 is -8. +4. Okay, now I get to multiply these two together, and that's +24. Now I multiply by an outside number, so the parentheses went away. And now I can say 24 plus 4 is 28. Okay. All right, another one just like it, number 16, so you can put a star next to him too. Yeah, I like this one better. In fact, I think this number 16 is more like the one on the final exam than 15. They're both very similar, but the things that make them different might matter to you. So let's put a star next to the correct one. How about that? So this is weird. Number 15, it says +4. Number 16, it says divide by 6, but if you just glance at it, it looks kind of like a plus, so you could screw up writing it down. So be careful. Like if you're on the final exam and you see this problem, make sure that's a divide, not a plus. All right, we're going to follow the order of operations. These guys in parentheses, he's in first. 2 minus 5 is -3. Larger number keeps the sign. Everything else the same. Don't touch it. Don't say 1 minus 2. Bad. All right, next is exponent. -3 squared is +9. Again, parentheses still there. Everything else exactly the way it looks. Okay? Now, I have a choice. I have a times and I have a divide. Those happen at the same time, so I'm going to go left to right first. So this 1 minus 18 divided by 6. Okay, 2 times 9 is 18. That minus is still there. And then I'm going to divide because that comes before I subtract. And 18 divided by 6 is 3. Okay, so now finally 1 minus 3, subtract, keep the larger number sign to get -2. So definitely look at 14 and 16 when you're doing order of operations problems to prepare for the final exam. All right, 17 and 18 and 19, they all deal with x being equal to -1 and y being equal to -3. So the thing is, when we say evaluate, that means plug in the numbers. Plug in numbers for letters. And then do PEMDAS. Okay, so number 17, we have 7x squared minus 2y. And then I'm going to just replace the x squared and the y with their numbers. So -1 is squared, and then -3 is y. Sorry, -1 is x, -3 is y. That's all I did. I just plug in numbers for letters, and then do order of operations. So exponents first, everything else is the exact same. -1 squared, 2 negatives make a positive, so that's why it's +1. And then I got multiplies. Now the multiplies are separated by a minus sign. So since they're separated, I could do them at the same time. If you're not comfortable with that, that's okay. Just do one and then do the next one on the next line. That's fine. But -2 times -3 is going to be +6, isn't it? 2 negatives make a positive. Again, when I'm multiplying, that's the rule. 7 plus 6, 13. That's all that's left. Yeah. So number 18. Let's see, -30 x cubed over y squared minus 15. So here I'm going to plug in my numbers. So I got -30 over -1 cubed, because x is -1. And then -3 squared minus 15, because y is -3. All right, exponents. And again, this is one of those big divide problems. So like number 14, I just keep the top and bottom separate until the very end. So this one, you get -30 still there. And then -1 times -1 is +1, but then times another -1 is -1. And then this guy is an exponent, so -3 times -3 is +9. 2 negatives make a positive. And then up top, I got times going on, because there's no symbol between them. So -30 times -1 is +30. And then 9 minus 15 is subtraction. The larger number keeps the sign, so I think that's -6. And then, ooh, -6 goes into 30 evenly, -5. Because remember, with dividing, if there's one negative, then there's a negative in your answer. Okay. Number 19, you want to put a star next to, because that's the one similar to the one on the final exam. We have 3x squared minus 8xy plus 2y cubed. All right, so plugging in your numbers, same numbers, -1 for x, -1 for every x, and then y is -3, I think, and then -3 cubed, and just check. Yep, that's right. I don't know, I'm starting to forget things, and that's how it goes. All right, order of operations says we're going to do exponents, because nothing inside the parentheses need to be done. So exponents is actually first here. Bring down everything else. So -1 squared is +1. Same, same, same. Right? I didn't do anything. Don't start doing shortcuts, okay? I know you did something the first term, you did something the last term. You might want to do all this stuff, but just hold off, okay? It's best. -3 cubed is going to be -3 times -3 is +9 times -3 is -27. Don't forget, keep the parentheses after exponents. Do not get rid of the parentheses. Bad. Okay, now multiply. So we can multiply, we can multiply, we can multiply. So they're all separated by pluses and minuses, so I can do them all on the same line. Now, if you don't want to, again, do one at a time, and that's fine. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 negatives. These 2 negatives make a positive, or you can do it this way. -8 times -1 is +8. And then over here, 2 times -27 is going to be -54. And then we can do these two, just doing 2 at a time, you know? It's -24. And you don't need this plus anymore. Okay, so with multiplying 3 negatives, you get a -24. Multiplying 1 negative, you get a -54. And then these both are positives, so we just get +3. All right, now we're subtracting. These two, different signs, so we're going to subtract 21, and then keep the negative for the larger number. And then -21 and -54 are both negative, so we're actually going to add them, and we're going, that's an A. And then we're going to say that's, what is that, 75? And they're both negative, so you keep that negative with you when you add. All right, yeah, that one seemed like the most amount of work, and of course that's the one on the final. But hopefully you understand how to do that better now. Okay. Number 20. And then I think I'll probably stop it after 22, and then I'll make another video for the factoring and solving equations and inequalities section, because that will be what's left. Okay, number 20. We have simplify. So we start off with -3 times a thing in parentheses. And you need to remember that when you simplify with letters involved, you do two things. So simplify with letters, or variables is a better word, but you know what? Just say what it is. Simplify with letters, you're going to do two things. You're going to distribute, and then you're going to combine like terms. Okay? So, in this case, we're just going to distribute this -3 all the way through it. So negative times negative is a positive, 6x. The x comes with it. And then -3 times 5 is a -15y. The y stays there. And then -3 times -1 is +3, because two negatives make a positive. That is all you do for number 20. Nice, huh? Number 21, we have 10x minus 5, parentheses 2x minus 3. I feel like this is the one you should star. It's the closest to the final exam problem like this. And in fact, I think that this is number 21 on the final exam too, which is really weird, but whatever. So the thing is about this, you might be tempted to FOIL it out. Do you remember foiling? Don't do that. So this would have to be in parentheses for you to FOIL. So don't do it. The only thing we're going to do is distribute this -5, and we're going to bring down the 10x just like he is. So -5 times 2 is -10x, right? Because one negative, there you are. And then -5 times -3 is +15, right? Because two negatives make a positive. And then we're going to combine like terms. Ooh, look, 10x minus 10x. They cancel. So you're just left with 15. And that's the answer. Yeah. Last one for part 1. This is just a little bit more practice. 2b minus 3 in parentheses next to a 4 plus 3 minus 2b in parentheses next to a 5. So it's two different distribute problems, like so. I like drawing the arcs. You should maybe think about doing that too. But 4 times 2 is 8, and bring down the b. 4 times 3 is 12. And then 5 times 3 is 15. And 5 times -2 is -10, and bring down the b. Okay? Squeaky chair. 8b, -10b, those two are different signs. They're like terms, so we're going to subtract. Get 2b, and then the larger number is negative. And then we have -12 and +15. Those are different signs, so we'll subtract. Keep the larger number sign plus. And that's all you do to that guy. All right, check out part 2.